We start section 12 looking at the relationship between two quantitative variables. So you can see in this table here we have two variables, but they're both quantitative. And so I want you to make sure you think about how that's different than the previous sections where we looked at categorical variables, right? Looking at the proportions of things, or we would look at a quantitative with a qualitative variable, categorical. Or like we and so when we recognize that, we use different tools to study that. So when we look at two quantitative variables, we create scatter plots. So we look at graphs, and many people are very familiar with that from their past algebra relationships or past algebra classes where you make graphs in the x and y, find equations of lines or equations of other curves. And so what we're interested in is finding out what kind of relationships exist between two quantitative variables. And so we'll start to examine that. And so one way to do that is to create a scatter plot. And with the scatter plot, that shows you kind of the story of the relationship, or that's what we're hoping to, right? And so here's an example. Many people are health conscious and think about the relationship between grams of fat in food and then the calories. And so what we're curious about, is there a relationship between grams of fat and calories, right? More calories means more grams of fat mean more calories, or vice versa, or no relationship. And so the way we do that is by starting with a graph. And so we take these values here and we would want to graph them, plot them. So we're not going to do that by hand, but let me just remind you what that is, just so that when we start to make these graphs here, you'll see the technology makes them really quick. And so we'll take the first one, 9 and 260, 9 grams of fat. And so it's like a map, right? In 260, 9 is 200, 220, 240, 260. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, or they're going by 25, 20 to 50. So somewhere in here would be 260, and it's an approximation for now, right? There's a point there. 13, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 320. And so then you go up and say, okay, my first one was 25, 13, 10, 11. See how, again, it becomes a little bit tedious, but so that's why we're going to end up using technology to do this. And you start to see some pattern with this. And so what we're going to do is I want to enter the data to StatCrunch. So you have fat and then calories. So once the data is all in, all right, you start entering, you have this data. What you do is you're going to create a graph scatter plot. Choose your variable. So we had fat and calories, and then you go ahead and compute, and then you get your scatter plot, right? And so again, that was in for StatCrunch not stat graph scatter plot, and then you pick your variables. Okay, and then what happens is you end up with data that looks like this here. And so then we see a relationship. You can see in here that and so now the story is being told, and I think you guys have enough algebra in you to kind of see that as we look at these values here, as the grams are increasing, it looks like the calories are increasing, right? And so to answer kind of some of these discussion questions here, what happens to the number of calories, right, as the grams increase? And so we can see that as we increase our grams, it looks like our calories increase also. Their values go up. And so what we want to do it somehow is use this information to estimate or make predictions. And so if McDonald's introduced another sandwich that had 19 grams of fat, could you estimate how many calories, right? And so we could use the table. Look, it's where's 19? 19 is close to 20. I'm guessing somewhere in the 400 range. Here's another one. 21's 420, maybe in the 400s. And really what you're doing to do this, right, is you're looking for, okay, let's see. Here's 19, and you're kind of, there's your 19 line. And then you say, okay, where is it hitting on the Y? 19. I would say somewhere in here where the data is. So my estimate would be somewhere here, right in the 400s. That's what we would estimate. That would be my estimate somewhere in here. So approximately the question mark 19 grams of fat, and I think the calories would somewhere be around 400, 420 calories. But that's how we would do that.